I can't actually think of a better talk to have followed what we value and what we're passionate about. I'm passionate about the privilege of living in Northern Ireland, in a land so beautiful, C.S. Lewis actually modeled Narnia on it. And I have to say, where I live on Carlingford Lough in the Mournes, it is a magical place. I'm passionate about the work that I do here. I think that this is where I live. Not the wee island of Ireland, rather, but the center of the universe. Go ahead, you can take that in. And what I'm passionate about here is that the work that I do is teaching entrepreneurship, helping people to create jobs, sometimes only their own job, to bring jobs one at a time. Why? I am the granddaughter of a reluctant immigrant who left in 1908 for work. I was lucky enough to return. This island has a wonderful policy that brings back its young, its children, and its grandchildren with a right of return. And so as I arrived to the exit of 1,000 of the children of this island a week, 54,000 in a one-week period between 2010 and 2011. And if that isn't bad enough, we are exporting the first generation reared in peace. I believe that that generation can take this island that is in the center of the world, the center of the creative industries in the Americas, North and South, and the production lines in Asia, and we can creatively insert ourselves into that, connecting them. To do that, our children are going to have their voices. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's something called an Irish voice. I learned about it in family therapy, of all things. But I don't think it's an Irish voice. I think it's what remains of generations of conflict. We have a way of speaking to each other. And, mind you, this crossed the pond. So, in 1975, freshly coiffed with a new perm, it was the rage, I met my father and my brother for dinner. You look lovely? No. Hi, how are you? No. My father's loving blue eyes over the top of his glasses looked at me and said, "My, don't you look like the ass end of a poodle." Shamed into getting the message that that hair would be blown out straight for the next 6 months, I never wore one curly again. Well, don't be different, got that message. 15 years later, while studying for my master's, I read in this text, the Irish discipline their children by chastising with shame and humor. Been there, got that. And then I skipped ahead to the Italians, my mother's family. They didn't do it. And then I skipped ahead to my husband's ethnic group. Nope. Whoops. In one aha moment, I realized that for the better part of 20 years, every time the man did something to annoy me, I made a joke of it. Reared as he was, he never got the message to cease and desist. He was actually encouraged to continue. I never thought about that cultural divide again until I moved here, and I had a famous trip to the butcher shop. I'll bore some of my friends again with it. I'd like a cut of meat, I call it brisket, and I describe it. And what would you be wanting that for? My children are coming and it's their favorite dinner? Well, your children will just have to learn to eat Irish. Well, I'll learn to eat Irish. My guests will learn to eat Irish. My children will have what they've always had. I'll be in at 2 o'clock tomorrow to pick it up. I walked out of the store dumbfounded first and scared. Because in that split second, I almost defaulted to the adaptive behaviors of my childhood and changed the order, as opposed to being my near 60-year-old self paying for something I was entitled to. In my office in Newry, I observed this kind of tensing thing going on for no good reason. What was it? Don't know. A few weeks later, saw it again. Third time I saw it, weeks later, I said, "What's that about?" Well, didn't you hear it? Hear what? The helicopter. No, these American reared ears wouldn't hear a helicopter. That's part of the traffic. visiting dignitary from the airport, traffic report, whatever. Likewise, I run into a police officer. I'm comforted. I feel safe and secure. Not so my neighbors, who are instantly, as with the sound of the helicopter, catapulted back 30 years to a time when that was unsafe. They are, in that moment, re-traumatized. Do I expect them to get over it? Absolutely not. You don't get over trauma, you get through it. And you get through it telling the stories again and again in a kind and civil voice from a place of safety. We've reached that place of safety. Why is that so important? Because in the minute that I hear that helicopter or greet that police officer and my child is next to me, I convey the fear and the anxiety, even though the response is no longer appropriate to their lives and to their situation. So, what do? We do the same thing when we rear them. We rear them as we were reared, and believe me, I did make this mistake with my own. Oh, you won't be putting your head above the parapet. Don't take chances. Don't be getting above your station. Quiet that ambition because, there might not be opportunity. And the worst, you'll not be bringing shame on this house. Whatever you do, don't tell the truth. We need to not disempower our children because if they're going to take their place on the world stage, they are going to need to get above their station. If they are going to create a new economy, if they're going to take place in a global economy, they're going to have to put their heads above the parapet. And most important, if we in this province are going to model to the world how to go from peace to prosperity, we are going to have to create a safe place for our children to throw off these messages, throw off these survival skills, which served us well in the day, but no longer serve us well, and developed and adapt their own thrival skills. Back to the butcher. I gave the butcher story, I mentioned the butcher story, in a group that I was running. And 6 months later, I ran into a woman from the group. I have a butcher story for you. What have I unleashed? I was in the butcher shop, and I remembered what you said about asking for something you don't see or sending a dish back as offering an opportunity for a shopkeeper to serve. So I didn't see it, and I asked for rhubarb. And he said, "No, I don't carry it. I don't know why. So-and-so up the road has a field of it. Leave it with me. Come in tomorrow." And so she went home. 2, 3, 4 hours went by, and there's a knock at the door, and it's a lad from the butcher shop. He said to give you this, a big bunch of rhubarb. One assertion in a kind and civil voice, and no, really, it's not cheekiness. One assertion kindly and civilly offered, met with a different response, and I would argue that that woman modeled a 21st century kind of communicating on the back of which our children will develop the skills. And we will be able to say that we created the space in between, the transitional and medial space for them to thrive. When it came to Ireland, there was a saying that really got on my nerves, because really, folks just weren't moving fast enough for this New York reared woman. We'll get there. It is in those words that I take the most comfort, because I would ascribe to a very old teaching that says, ours is not to complete this task of repairing and restoring the world, but neither may we desist from the labor. We'll get there. Thank you.